How will the newest Pacers help the team? We'll do a deeper dive into Kelly Oubre, Larry Nance, and Braden Smith, their strengths and how they will apply to this Pacers team on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and Circle City Spin, and today, a favorite of mine in the offseason, because I get to do research and learn about the team, the How They Can Help series, looking at all three of the Pacers' new players. Very convenient. We did 3 segments. There's 3 new players. The intent of this episode is to do a much deeper dive. I've watched these guys play, obviously, since the Pacers added them in some way, looking at their numbers or their advanced whatevers from whatever websites that I have access to, and you maybe don't, and to look closer at how these guys can help the Pacers. Kelly Oubre, Larry Nance, Braden Smith, a couple of things you might have known. Some of them are very obvious. A couple of things you might not have known. A couple numbers that were revealing, at least to me, when looking at this stuff. And we answer that question. How are they going to help the Pacers? And I must remind you, every year this drives me crazy. That is all this is looking at how they can help. This is not a comprehensive look at their failures and shortcomings as players, because that is a different thing that I have done many times. And also, yes, I am changing my background to /house a lot right now, so I apologize that the background might look a little the same, a little different. Maybe it sounds different. That'll be changed very quickly. You don't care about that. You care about how the Pacers' new players can help. Kelly Oubre, we start with him, the team's most profile addition by far. And what stands out about him, even statistically, is something that I've kind of mentioned many times, including talking with former Sixers coverage people and things of that nature, is just the generalist nature of his game, that he's got a lot that he can do and very little that you'd say, this is Kelly Oubre's thing, right? This one thing he can do, this one shot, whatever. He doesn't have that, but he has a lot of stuff that he is extremely capable of. I think I've explained this before, but I'll do it again for this one. Synergy has what their points per possession rating numbers. They like rank them and then they grade them out using one term, and it's like good, average, very good, excellent, below average, and poor, I think, are all of the grades. Kelly Oubre's play type data from last year, all of them are average or better. Spot up's good, transition average, isolation very good, pick and roll ball handler good, cutting good, miscellaneous plays very good, offensive rebounds, aka putbacks, good, handoffs excellent, pick and roll man excellent, and a lot of these ones that I just said at the end there are very low volume, except for one play type that is not good or better or average or better, and that is post-ups, of which he did 10 times and scored 8 points, and that grades out as below average. I do not think the Pacers should be asking Kelly Oubre to post up, but that kind of feeds into something I talk about with him so much and reinforces something I've talked about, which is there's so many situations where having Kelly Oubre on the floor will help. And I don't want to just read off a screen, but if you go back to 2024-25, there's one more thing that grades out as below average, but it's almost exactly the same, where everything is good or better, and his cutting graded out as excellent that year. If you made me say what is his specialist thing, I would say cutting, if you had me do that. The year before that, his spot ups graded as below average. Again, everything else at average or better. And so that is, to me, the type of player that, on one hand, again, this is mostly how they can help. On some nights, Kelly Oubre, I think, will leave fans a little frustrated because there's not like one thing that he'll be really changing the game. On the other hand, he's always capable of something. Like, he's had a 30-plus point game, if not multiple, in every season of his career since 2018. Like, he's capable of that, and it's because he can do all these things at a good enough level that there'll be some nights where his matchup's very favorable. There'll be some nights where the team system really suits him and his energy level for that particular game, or a certain lineup is really clicking for him, or he's feeding off of a big in a really productive way, or whatever. The fact that he's capable of so much, especially on offense, in terms of the variety, not a crazy ceiling all the time, but he's capable of a lot. And that is one way that he will help the Pacers, is that there are lots of situations they'll be able to turn to him to, and not just throw him the ball and say, make something happen, but put him on the floor, and he will be additive to that lineup offensively, because he can be the right off-ball piece, because he can pair well with the big, because he'll be able to do something of value to the team. And when you're 6'8" and have tidy enough, not great, but tidy enough efficiency, that's helpful. in terms of actual spots on the floor, rim finishing really stands out. He's had a couple seasons recently about 70% at the basket. Turns out when you're 6'8" and athletic, it's pretty easy to finish. Some powerful dunks, on balance, right? A guy of his stature should be a good finisher, right? But that's a good thing. And I think you saw that a lot last year. I've talked about this a lot. His handoffs were one of his most improved play types as him and Joel Embiid kind of developed just a little bit of chemistry. Him and Drummond to a lesser extent because Embiid didn't play all the time. Of, just some action at the top. And Oubre's driving off these handoffs. It wasn't really like side to side or using the screen with so much, power or pop, but he just kind of take the handoff and go straight to the basket. Boom, straight to the rim. And sometimes defenders are there, but he has a nice floater. He's got just enough of a finishing package. He's not like some massively creative finisher, but good enough to finish there. And his three-point shooting reached 36% last year. That's not exceptional. I'm not calling that a great shooter, but that's average for a position, a little below average. But he's good from the corners. 3 of the last 4 years, he's been above average from the corners, an improvement of his shot profile from there. I'm not saying this will happen again because it has happened, but the Pacers have had success with at least slight tweaks to guys' jumpers being very favorable. In fact, most of the time that has worked for them. I'm not suggesting that because it has happened, they're going to make Kelly Oubre a better shooter, but there's a reason to believe that they can, especially if their system can create him open shots. So turns out in the modern NBA, being a good rim finisher and corner shooter is good. So again, there will be nights where it feels like you're asking yourself, can Kelly Oubre do a little bit more? That's fine. I think when that player's coming off the bench instead of starting, like Oubre has done for so many of his recent teams and in so many recent roles that he's had on these teams. And I think that too will help him. More defined role, more specifically off the bench. He'll have to adjust to that, but he'll be more fresh for his minutes. He won't be overtaxed with being like this crazy stopper. But I've only really talked about offense. There's also defensive situations where he's pretty useful. Of course, like the best offensive group, he's like one injury away for being a part of that for the Pacers. The best defensive group, he's probably already there. The Pacers need a rebound, he's probably already there. He's in consideration for so many scenarios. Now, critically, as Tyrese Haliburton mentioned too, when we asked him, like, hey, what do you like about the offseason moves? How do these help the team? Things like that. Synergy also has defensive play type data. And the same kind of thing stands out. Outside of isolation, which was 7% of his defensive possessions, he graded out as poor. That's bad. Everything else was good or better. Good on spot ups, very good against ball handlers in the pick and roll, very good against roll men in the pick and roll. That was good, not very good. I'm sorry. Very good against guys off screens, very good against guys off handoffs, good off cuts, and graded out poorly again on post ups. Don't care. 18 possessions. So that's good. Variety on defense, of course, is helpful. And again, same exercise. If you go back through past seasons, some things go up or down, 10% to some extent. Like he was a little worse against ball handlers in the pick and roll the year before that, but was awesome against isolations. And he wasn't that good against isolations last year by the numbers. So you can see that regardless, if you want to split defending the ball handler in a pick and roll and isolation, whatever way you want, guarding the ball, he's at worst okay at, and if not, halfway decent to good. And you go back and you look at, and this is somewhat a function of who's on the 76ers roster, his most common defensive matchups last year in the regular season. Here's top 5. Jaylen Brown, Jalen Johnson, Brandon Ingram, Donovan Mitchell, and Derek White. Those are the players that 76ers said, hey, Kelly, you got that guy tonight. And the Pacers will not do that. I mean, he'll get reps on those guys, certainly, but I would imagine very rarely, for all the things Kelly Oubre can be good at, will he be the guy put on the floor who is the best defensive player on the floor, especially on the wing. Nembhard could be out there. Aaron Nesmith could be out there. Siakam and him are, comparable defensive level players, I would say, right? So perhaps there's a small chance there's a lineup that Kelly Oubre is the best defender on the floor, but I'd say most of the time he'll be guarding one peg down. So use his defensive impact to whatever extent you believe it to be and say, okay, great. That's now going against the team's second, maybe third best player or a smaller guard or whatever, instead of these absolute studs. So I don't think Kelly Oubre is this perfect fit who's going to wow everybody every single night with this one thing or this other thing or whatever. No, I don't think anybody thinks that. There's a reason he got 2 years, $16 million, which is still, to be clear, a fairly robust contract. But if you're zooming out and doing what we're doing right now, and you're asking, how can he help the Pacers? It's that, yes, like of the things that you'd consider damaging, like he does turn the ball over sometimes. He'll fall asleep on defense sometimes, but he doesn't do anything that hurts you. He doesn't suck at any skill. And that is extremely valuable. This is not like Ben Shepherd where it doesn't make mistakes. Kelly Oubre makes mistakes, but Kelly Oubre has, upside of 30-point games and not boomer bust. That's too wide of a range of outcomes, but actual successes that he can create, that his strengths allow to happen in a way that Ben Shepherd's don't, which is why him not making any mistakes is extremely important. Whereas Oubre helps in so many ways by being just kind of good at a lot of stuff and not terrible at like anything. So he'll have to be focused. I think that'll be a big deal. He'll have to make at least some of his threes. That will be a big deal. I think the Pacers will be figuring out a little bit what the best ways to deploy him early in the season are, because he's such a generalist, because there's so many ways that he can help, but you're trying to find the best ones for a team when you're coming into a new role and perhaps a completely new amount of minutes and where they're coming from. But it's very obvious to me that he will help the Pacers and has many ways of doing so. And every number is like, yeah, he's pretty, he's good at that. He can do that. He can do that. He can do this. He can do that. And so unless they're asking him to bomb 8 threes a game or they're asking him to create a shot in isolation all the time, I think the Pacers will be happy with Kelly Oubre and what he gives them. But we'll, of course, have nights where they're wanting more from him. And speaking of wanting more, Larry Nance needs to play. Let's talk about Larry Nance and what the numbers say about what he can do or has done in recent seasons and how he might help the Pacers coming up next year on Locked On Pacers.
The problem of finding clothes that you can live in all day, be comfortable, and do whatever you need to do, whether it's just chilling, going to meetings, playing golf, being on the move, that problem has been solved by Cozy Earth. The everyday polo is the answer. It's lightweight, built to move with you, just easy to wear everywhere. I've got it on right now, and it's fabulous. Plus, the Cozy Earth Essential Socks, they're exactly what the name suggests. Soft, supportive, comfortable enough that you stop thinking about them halfway through the day. Plus, Cozy Earth backs everything with a 10-year warranty and hassle-free returns. So if something isn't quite right, you're covered. That makes trying them for yourself an easy decision. I've got the Cozy Earth Everyday Polo in blue and in black. Check them out at CozyEarth.com. Use the code LOCKEDON for 20% off. That's right, Locked On for an exclusive 20% off. And if you see a post-purchase survey, please mention you heard about it right here, CozyEarth.com.
And we're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making this your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, oh boy, it is August 20th. It is August 19th when the trades happen, and there is things booming. Peyton Watson is coming to the Pacers division. That's a big move that impacts them. I already did the moves that impact the Pacers. That one definitely does. We'll see how much better the Cavs actually are. But Peyton Watson on the move, first-round picks on the move, Max Strus is on the move. Somehow Cam Whitmore and Trey Mann get caught up in this. Dennis Schroeder, who I'm like apparently higher on than anyone alive, is on the move in this trade. Whoo! Big one. Locked On Cavs, Locked On Hornets, Locked On Wizards, Locked On Nuggets, Locked On Clippers. My second listen, maybe my own first listen, because I'm not going to listen to myself, will be Locked On Nuggets because, what? The Nuggets are just punting on being better. I'm opining on other things. You're here for Pacers talk. Make those your second listen today. The power of the Locked On Network. Okay, Larry Nance. Let's be clear. Might not have a lot left in the tank. I've said that many times. I still believe that. But the Pacers clearly believe he has something to give. I've kind of compared this to, if you remember this, people remember mostly because those seasons were the best 2 seasons for the Pacers, the last 2 years of James Johnson with the team, which was him primarily doing nothing on the court, which is fine. He was an A+++++ locker room guy. And I saw that with my own eyes. That is not regurgitating from other people. Right? That's great. That's still valuable to the team. That he made me reevaluate what I think of veteran players and what value they have to a roster and what being in the trenches with other dudes helps with, instead of everybody going, oh, just be an assistant coach. If it was the same, teams would do that. They don't. And so there is value to the veteran part of this. But the first year of James Johnson with the Pacers, I'm not saying he was mega productive, but they turned to him in the rotation a few times early in the season, especially against his former team that he knew well. And he had that game in Portland. I don't know if anybody remember this. I think he might have started. He either started or came off the bench, but had a very involved role as the team's point guard in that game. This is a real thing that happened. I don't know if people remember this. This was not that long ago. And so that is kind of where I equate Larry Nance's current career arc to being in it might be over in terms of meaningful every night production. And yet, if you turn to how they can help, there are moments and situations where you go, oh, James Johnson is playing point guard, or, oh, he knows the other team really well. He can help. That I see Larry Nance actually helping. Caught a couple of his games. I'm glad I talked to Danny about him for that show. He hosts Locked On Cavs, ironically, about what he did for the Cavs last year, because he mentioned, Larry Nance was in the rotation for Cleveland early last season. That was like, oh, well, I should obviously just go back to that time of Cleveland season to try to catch up with what he was doing then before, Thomas Bryant and others were in the mix. But early in the year, he was playing 12 to 15, over 20 in a couple cases. He started once minutes a game until he got hurt in mid-November. And so that is, of course, of note here, is that last year, the team that made the conference finals, one of them in the East, started the season with this guy in their rotation. So is he maybe on the tail end of his productive part of his career? Absolutely. Not disputing you at all. But I think the write it off completely thing is maybe a little rich, even though I do think that he will be out of the Pacers rotation. That said, of note that injuries have limited him to under 500 minutes both of the last 2 seasons. And that makes a big challenge in evaluating him statistically and on the court. There's not a lot there. There's not a lot to actually grip onto and go, there it is. That's the thing. That happened all the time. It didn't. Nothing happened all the time. And this is supposed to be how they can help look at all the good things they've done. And there are good things, but this is all context that I felt with Nance was important to describe what he can do and what he hopes to do and what the Pacers hope he does this season. Because if you go do the same thing and say, well, what did he do defensively last year, or what are his strengths on synergy? Defensively, when he was against pick and roll ball handlers, not the greatest. When he was against isolations and when he was against other defensive play types, he actually fared pretty well. And I would consider defending a ball handler and pick and roll a switch. And he didn't do awful in those. His percentile rank was, I'm wrong. I'm reading the wrong thing. He did. It's not a very good number. He actually switched quite a bit, though. That's something that Caitlin Cooper wrote about in her story about him, is how much more often he was doing that than Pacers bigs. 34% of his defensive possessions last year were exactly that. I'm sorry. 34% of the time was his rank in the league. I'm all over the place with my notes. In terms of how often he defended pick and roll ball handlers, he switched more often, what I'm saying, than the typical big man does. And so that's one thing to note, is he didn't do awesome on those, but they can ask him to do it. He at least did it, but he actually defended pretty well on other play types last year. And if you go back 1 year, even before that, with the Atlanta Hawks, you see a similar story. Good defensive play type data, particularly against rollmen, decently good against isolation, handling the switch stuff okay with them. And if you go back to Chad Buchanan on Setting the Pace with Alex and Facci, what he talked about when they asked him about Larry Nance was defense being the thing that they hope he can help with, and specifically versatility on that end of the floor, right? And so I think on offense, you can see the statistical things that have changed Larry Nance's career, but on defense, there's at least something that I can say, yes, that is the side of the floor that I predict he will, if called upon for real minutes, help the Pacers the most. And at his height, it's mostly that he's heady and formally athletic enough that his decline has not made him really slow, and he's very active with his hands. And so he can just kind of stay in front of guys and be in the right spots and be disruptive at the basket and do all these things that used to land a rebound in his hands and now helps his team on the glass. He's played with a lot of huge guys the last couple of years. But if you go look at his own stats to try to see where is he fighting off decline the best, right? One is offensive rebound rate. He's a very, very good offensive rebounder, timing, anticipation, 7.1% offensive rebound percentage last year. That's pretty good. He was at well over 12 at the highlights of his career, but 7.1% actually grew from the year before with Atlanta and is close to where he was with Portland and New Orleans right before that, right? The other one is his steal rate. His steal percentage is still very healthy and well over 2%. It's been over 2% his whole career, but has held that way the last couple of years, which to me, once again, speaks to anticipation, just enough pop to get the ball, be around the play, get your team possessions. And you got to be good on defense to actually help with that. Just if you watch him, again, even at this stage where he's not as fast or even close to as fast as he used to be, or the guy who was in the dunk contest, he's just very instinctive. And that's good. That's helpful for a Pacers team that's going to say, hey, you have to use your instincts all the time and do them very quickly. I thought he defended shots at the rim pretty well going back to watch him, regardless of the play type that got him around the basket. And I wanted to check the synergy data to see, hey, how did that look? At the rim, he ended up defending 25% of shots down there compared to the rest of the league time, and did pretty well handling those with Atlanta. And then with Cleveland last year, He ended up grading out at 85th percentile defending layups in terms of his points per shot allowed and 58% on all shots at the rim. That you could at least see, and then the numbers back that up. I can't believe I'm saying this. Not a good shooter by any stretch of the imagination, although that's been a growing part of his game. 33% from three last year, over 40% the years before that. And 2 years ago was like actually a real number of games and real minutes. He played over 1,000 minutes and made 41% of his 65 threes, becoming at least credible enough as a catch and shooter. I do not think he will be guarded. The volume is too low. The release is not very fast. But if he takes a three, don't wince. This is not Tony Bradley. This is not like, what's going on? He's adding this to his game. This has been added and is something that is at least like an underrated thing. So there's all this stuff that I'm like, yeah, all this stuff could happen for Larry Nance. If he's put in a game, I can see him doing this or that to help the Pacers for 5 minutes here or 5 minutes there or whatever. But the biggest thing is going to be the teammate stuff. People in the league have described, even players have described him to me as a really good teammate. I mean, I wrote back and read after they signed him the CBS story about the Cavs just loving him. Jalen Tyson said, first of all, called him a great leader and player, but then said, I told him today I got a new profound respect for dudes that play a long time in this league because this league is a monster. Larry Nance is still going. I think the teammate stuff is going to have real tangible value, and clearly the Pacers do too because they signed him to a contract. So how he can help is clearly the flimsiest. The numbers are not super strong or supportive of a player who's going to be, in a rotation every night. Health will be a big deal for him, but at least there's some things you can latch onto and say, maybe you can hit a jumper here, defend around the basket there, not kill you on defense in a way that the minutes they'll survive. If he's out there, not every night, but on occasion. And that brings us to the rookie, Braden Smith. What does his college tape say that he can do to help the Pacers? We'll dive into that to close out today's Locked On Pacers. But first, everybody, got to talk to you guys about FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. If you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. And best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games. Whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league or whatever you're doing, every game is someone capable of going deep. Now you get the chance to make your prediction before the first pitch. So many things to check in on to see who has a chance to hit one out, right? Is it someone who's on a hot streak hitting wise? Is it a favorable pitching matchup? Is it a shorter ballpark or one that just tends to give up home runs? First things you can check out before making your daily dingers pick. So are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action on FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer, play ball, and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of the MLB. And we're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making this your first listen today and every single day. Make Locked On NBA Game Night your second listen because myself and Ryan Blackburn are breaking down this crazy 5-team trade. Peyton Watson is the headliner of it all. I opined a little bit on it earlier in the first segment. Also, my back's starting to hurt. I'm going to fall out of the stool any second now. So let's get to Braden Smith. Here in the third segment, I've watched him play several times now at Purdue games that I can find for free online. In fact, I think all of them are on YouTube, so plenty for you guys to watch as well. I love that there's just randomly full-length college basketball games on YouTube every year when I like to really dive in and see what these guys can do. Let's do the obvious thing first, right? Kelly Oubre, there's not one thing we need to talk about for a long time. Larry Nance, there's no one thing to talk about for a long time. Braden Smith, there is absolutely one thing to talk about for a long time. His passing is sensational, right? Led the country in assist percentage and points produced 2 seasons ago. Last year was also slinging it and led the country in and upped his assist numbers. Led the country in assists the year before that too per game, right? Nasty passer. There's a reason he's the all-time collegiate leader in assists. If you watch the standout thing to me from Purdue, and you can go back past seasons, seeing him playing with Edie, more recently with Trey Kaufman-Renn, who's with Minnesota now. He's just very good at his connection with those bigs that he's played with for all this time, taking his time, reading the defense, reset, do it again, see this play, do that play. Eventually, something would materialize. And if nothing materialized, great, 6 seconds on the shot clock. Here comes another screen. That big and Braden Smith are going to try to wiggle something free at the end. But he's really good at connecting with bigs and like learning the tendencies and learning how to read the defense to either set up himself, set up the big, whatever that may be. And he times all those things up really well. And the thing about growing connection is at Purdue, somehow in the college basketball landscape that there is today, they keep guys for a while. And so he had time to build these connections, which to me suggests, especially if you go look at like very early last season games, it might not look awesome from day one. It's not like he's going to enter the boom and be like slinging it to the bigs every. I think he had 7 assists per game in summer league. I think he'll do pretty well, but like I think he'll look way better at the end of the season than the start for a lot of reasons, and this is one of them. But his connection with bigs as a passer was impressive. So what will that look like for the Pacers, right? Because he's often creating an advantage in that case, or using one created for him by a big, and that second part is important, because that is keeping an advantage alive. That's what I think he'll look like doing his best thing in the NBA. And for the Pacers, he'll have to identify where that advantage is. He's good at that. See the open shooter. Where are they? Best matchup is where? What play should we run? Right. Keeping an advantage, though, that's different. He'll have to work on that part of it. So it's already created. The ball comes his way. What does he do? Does he get all the way to the rim? Does he get to a shot right away? Does he use that advantage to make a defense rotate and then pass? Or he's very sharp. That's where I think he'll look awesome. But that's what things are going to be. I think he'll identify advantages. I think he'll even be able to use some space if given it by a screen. But keeping advantages alive, that is so required for the Pacers and all their random actions. That's the whole point of what they do, is get an advantage and just keep it going and going and going until they get a good shot. But I think that will be what's fascinating for him, is if it's already created, what can he do with it? Because I think his brains and his passing power will just naturally create some of them on their own. The next thing I want to talk about is really related to, shocker, his height. And it's crazy that I'm using this in a how he can help part, because he's short. He's talked about overcoming his size, even at his own draft workout with the Pacers. So if you only watch Summer League, you never know. But 42% of his shots his last year of college were from mid-range. You can grimace at that. That's okay. That's a lot, right? The Pacers and no NBA team should want that. That's a lot. But that is a function of his height, because he can get to the rim, to be clear. He shot 58% of the basket. I think 19% of his shots came at the rim, but that's pretty low. But, you know, if you're going to get swatted, if you don't have a ton of space, you've got to find creative ways to get your shot up. And for him, that was a little bit of like cross the lane fadeaway here, being willing to pull up from the foul line or the elbows there and make those shots consistently. Last year, 45% of his mid-range shots went in. That's not awesome. That's good enough. Like, that's an acceptable shot, at least. It's not awesome, but it's acceptable, right? And so he has to have these craftier, refined finishes, off balance, fading away, that would be tough or not advised for someone else, but for him are fine because of his height. That will be harder in the pros, but a shot that he already has to help him score and finish off some of those advantages that the team he's playing for has already created at that time. I think he'll get his shots off. He doesn't get shot like swatted to the third row all the time. Keep those spatial advantages alive that the Pacers offense really can create. Defensively, look, his height is limiting, but good steal rate. If he's not going to be as much of a deterrent, great. Win some possessions that way. His defense will need to work in the NBA. That's a good start. So what is help for Braden Smith? What is helping the Pacers? Well, one is he shouldn't be. There's zero reason that he should be helping the Pacers win games this early in his career. What does it look like generally for the Boom or in his future? I think it's going to be somebody who can move the rock quickly, have action stay popping and moving, and then finish when space is there, or take that space, which Cam Jones was good at, but then his decision-making after that was not very good. Take that space and set someone else up to make something happen. And, of course, just enough steals to make himself a useful to good and pesky defender. That is how I think Braden Smith will help the Pacers. Perhaps this year, in the future, certainly would be the hope for the team. And that is how they can help. Thank you guys for tuning in to this one. Tomorrow, Dustin Dopirak's going to join again for the second time in a month. Sorry, Dustin. For our yearly check-in on the biggest Pacers storylines entering the season from our beat writery perspective. I think he's the perfect person to do that episode with. And then next week, so much more coming. We'll do our What Are the Odds? We'll check in with some other local experts on these players that we just talked about. Probably a notebook time. I'll have enough stuff between Haliburton talking and transactional things and all this stuff to do one of those. The softball game is early next week, so lots still to come. Thank you all so much for listening. You can find me on social media at Tony Ireese and this podcast at Locked On Pacers. Back tomorrow talking more Pacers, telling everybody have a wonderful day.